This video encompasses the history and details of phylogenetic trees and how these trees can represent the process of evolution by speciation. Let's begin. First off, evolution can be defined simply as descent with modification, or more complexly, the change in genetic composition of a population over successive generations. This concept can be mapped out by what is known as a phylogenetic tree. However, before we look at the aspects of a phylogenetic tree, let's take a brief moment to discuss the man who shed light on this concept, Charles Darwin. Darwin was a naturalist born in England who spent 5 years traveling the globe on the HMS Beagle. His observations led him to formulate his own theory of evolution and the concept of natural selection. Charles Darwin illustrated the first modern phylogenetic tree. The sketch was found in his notebook entitled Red Transmutation Notebook B, which he wrote in 1837. Evolutionists such as Jean-Baptiste Lamarck and Augustin Aguirre proposed branching figures of animals and plants. However, Darwin's phylogenetic tree was the first to propose an evolutionary tree of life. So what is a phylogenetic tree? It is a representation of the evolutionary relationships among a set of organisms or a group of organisms called taxa. The tips of the tree represent groups of descended taxa, and the nodes on the tree represent the common ancestors of those descendants. The tree is represented in chronological order from the root to the tips. The older taxa are closer to the nodes, while the newer taxa are closer to the tips of the tree. Following speciation, a single tip is split into two tips, representing the formation of two daughter species from a single parent species. Each lineage, or branch, on a phylogenetic tree has its own distinctive history. Even though each line is unique to itself, you can trace back on a lineage to determine the relatives of a now living species, and also figure out its common ancestors. Sets of species that are descendant from a common ancestor are considered monophyletic, and a set of species that includes the common ancestor along with only some of the descendants is called paraphyletic. Sets of species that are polyphyletic are grouped by similarity, but not descendant from a common ancestor. Many phylogenetic trees incorporate an outgroup. This species, or taxa, is outside the group of interest. Now that we have grasped the basic concepts of the phylogenetic tree, let's discuss the different types of trees. First, a dendrogram is simply a basic term to describe a generic phylogenetic tree, similar to the ones we have previously discussed. A cladogram is a phylogenetic tree that contains no relationship with the aspect of time. All the lines on the tree do not represent any relative representation of when each speciation occurred. A phylogram is a phylogenetic tree in which the length of the edges provides a true representation in time. These types of phylogenetic trees provide a real and applicable evolutionary history timeline. A phylogenetic tree can also be rooted or unrooted. The main difference between a rooted and an unrooted phylogenetic tree is the representation of a common ancestor. Rooted trees reveal an established common ancestor between species, while the unrooted tree does not provide a rooted common ancestor. Essentially, phylogenetic trees can be thought of as a kind of map. They are an easy-to-read visualization of the history of species. Hopefully this video has shed some light on the conceptuality of phylogenetic trees.
Created using Powtoon.